Flower friends, welcome to this lesson on beautiful bouquets and perfect poses. Now, we've covered off in our previous lessons all about how to condition our flowers, what we're going to choose. This is one of my favourite fundamentals of floristry because everybody loves a bunch, a bouquet, a posy, call it what you will. And from medieval times, it's been a way of fragrancing the air and presenting flowers, known as a tuzzy-muzzy or as a nosegay. Elizabethans used to carry a bunch of scented blooms and herbs. In those pre-sewerage times, you can imagine just how whiffy it was. So anything to help add a little bit of fragrance would have been welcome. And they are welcome still today. Everybody loves to receive a bunch. And the way I like to create mine is a very organic, gentle way. I'm honestly not a fan of those very strict spiral stem tied bunches that have that perfect hard dome. It just feels very unnatural to use such beautiful natural plant material to create something so stiff and starchy. So that's why when I create my tied bunches and bouquets, I like to have a much more organic approach to it. And it's often the sort of thing that I will do wandering around my garden, or if I'm lucky, a more flowery friend's garden. And I just snip stems and I use my hand as the vase to add in the flowers. But the first step is we have to prepare all our stems. If we're in the garden, I do it one-handed. So I'm cutting my hydrangea and then I'm picking those leaves off like that because I've got the bunch in the other hand, or a pair of scissors. To get some experience of creating tied bunches, work on a bench and give yourself as much space as you can and prepare all your stems in advance. And by that I mean stripping all the leaves off, making sure that the stems are at least half, if not 2/3, clean of any foliage or side shoots. And you'll find it's a much, much better thing to do all of it, because what you don't want to have to do is when you start creating your bouquet, you don't want to have to put it down to prepare more plant material. And I also like to have all of my flowers in types. And that helps me to gauge how many stems I've got, how many I've got left. Now, it does make your hand ache because you're using your hand as a vase. I tend to create a bunch and tie it off at the end, but if as you're creating you need to rest your hand, then it's quite a good idea to have a deepish, stoutish bucket at your side that you can put your stems and bouquet into as you're working. But I start off a couple of stems, 3 heads of something really lovely and supportive, like these heavenly hydrangea. Sedum also works really, really well. And I'm now just going to assemble. So the joy of heads of hydrangea is it means I can thread that stem down through the middle of the flower. It helps to support that stem. And then I just catch the stem at the other side. So just, you can find a gap in between them or just gently ease it through. So that's why we needed to strip off all of our foliage as we're working. And when I'm creating a tied bunch, I turn it, I look at it in lots of different angles, and I tend to mix up what I'm working with. And when I'm cutting a bunch as I'm walking around the garden, it really literally is whatever there is to hand. But when it's something like this, it just means that I can cluster and group the flowers. And I don't worry about positioning them all in one place and let them fall and move to where they want to be. As we're learning from using chicken wire with our mechanics, the way the flower falls is always the prettiest anyway, and it becomes a much looser, softer effect. And gorgeous things like these lovely garden roses, I've stripped every one of the thorns off because as I'm threading that stem through, I don't want them to be snagging on the heads of hydrangea. And I'm also clustering and grouping. I'm positioning the odd single stem, so you don't have to have everything the same. And you are literally creating gorgeousness in your hand that has a really soft, loose, organic feel. And this is the sort of way that I would create a bridal bouquet. So this is an absolutely brilliant skill to have, because if you're taking flowers to a friend, or if you're wanting to create wedding flowers for yourself or for someone else, this is one of the most magical techniques to learn. And you see how tight it becomes. After a while, you're starting to force those stems down, because this lovely network here, and they all start to support one another. And throughout the year, you'll find that different flowers work really well for you as those lovely supports. So the hydrangea, the sedum work well, but in the spring, a little layer of something like a narcissi or a daffodil, that works perfectly to then thread through other spring stems. And these lovely calla lilies slide in like a dream. And bear in mind, it's nice to have a little bit of up and down, some recession. As we've been learning through our lessons, I like flowers to replicate nature so that they really have a gentle feel to them. Nice, loose, soft stems such as this scabious just gently slides in, and I can just use my other hand to manipulate it and bring it down to where I want it to be. And I'm creating layers. So I'm working with texture and colour, but I'm really building up lots of layers to give myself something that just feels very organic and loose. You almost need a longer arm because you want to step away from it. And in fact, when we're creating a bridal bouquet as a tied bunch, we'll often have to have two of us so that someone can hold it away from you. Or you can work into a mirror. And as you place your stems, don't worry too much. Things like roses are really good and robust. So some stronger stems. Look at that beautiful garden rose. And this smells magnificent. And my roses are threading in. So as I'm working, I'm seeing that I'm almost there. My workbench is nearly empty. And I've got a rounded, cohesive, balanced shape. It doesn't have to be that domed effect. Not when it's a mix of lovely textures like this. The gorgeous zinnias, these there, it's the same flower, all those crazy colours. That is more domed, but I've still got some recession. I've got lots of lovely texture and depth. And with the bunch of garden roses, they just arrange themselves. That's just roses and mint threaded together. And then just as a little finishing touch, look at these dahlias. They're like fireworks, and I'm adding those just as a little finishing flourish, and then to tie it off. I like to use this. It's a paper-covered wire, so you can go relatively tightly around the bunch without actually cutting through those stems. So I'm just binding it around 2 or 3 times. Don't go mad. You don't need to go around so many times. And then just bring your towel forward so that you're protecting your blooms. Rest it on the edge of your bench and then just tie it off in position. And then trim your stems. Now, if you're going to give this to someone as a present, you might leave them at full length or just approximate them down, shorten them a bit, and then you'd be able to cut and split each of those stems and place it in a bucket of water. And then if you're going to present it as a gift, or if it's for a bride, then when it's ready to be given, you would take it out of the bucket, you would trim the stems down probably at least half again. I never like a tied bunch to have a huge amount of stem. And then if you wished, you would wrap a ribbon around it, a tie, a strand of ivy can look gorgeous. So you have this beautiful, soft, gentle, garden-gathered bouquet. Your task is to have a practice. Use your hand as a vase, graze around your garden or your local flower shop and make a little perfect posy or a beautiful bouquet from some stems and just see how you get on.